Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 161 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about mental aid stations. I am jacked about this episode. There is so much meat, I feel like, here to dive into. Very excited to share this. This wasn't meant to be a series, but in recent weeks, we've kind of talked about some similar themes. Back on episode 157, we talked about avoiding burnout. So go back and listen to that episode. On episode 159, we kind of talked about the flip side of burnout, which is the dream job of being a criminal defense lawyer. But today, we are talking about mental aid stations, and I have got some, I think, nuggets of wisdom that I have pulled out of volunteering at this past weekend's Hellbender 100-mile race, which is a race near Old Fort, North Carolina, in Black Mountain. And had the amazing experience of being an aid station volunteer. And so these reflections are reflections from that experience of being an aid station volunteer, but as applied to the law. And I really think there are some great takeaways from that experience. I've done some kind of racing compared to being a lawyer, foot racing compared to being a lawyer episodes in the past. For those of you that are interested in running or just want to kind of take away these business takeaways from endurance races, back on episode 101, I talked about the marathon of business, comparing kind of marathon experience to running a legal practice. Back on episode 139, we talked about the ultra marathon of business after experiencing the Daytona 100 foot race in Florida. Again, kind of that endurance takeaways as applied to business. So if you're interested, go back and listen to those two episodes. But this one in particular, I'm really excited to share. So I have 10 takeaways plus a bonus takeaway, just like I had done on those marathon and ultra marathon episodes. 10 takeaways as applied to the practice of law from this experience of being an aid station volunteer. So number one, this is number one takeaway. Question was, why did we go? Why did I go in the first place to be an aid station volunteer? And I would like to say that it was primarily to help other endurance athletes to kind of give back to the running community, so to speak. But that was not the primary reason. Primary reason was my son, who is 12, Manuel, is getting into ultra running. And so I wanted him to see runners in action. And so this race started at 4:00 in the morning on a Friday morning. We volunteered at the final aid station at mile approximately 93 from 10 p.m. on Friday to 8 a.m. on Saturday. And the reason that I wanted to do that last aid station is I wanted Manuel to see what human beings are capable of. What does greatness in the endurance world look like? So here they are, 7 miles from the finish line, almost at that point of being there at the finish line, but still with a, what feels probably like an eternity at that point to go. And so I wanted Manuel to experience that, to see firsthand what people can go through. And so, we got there at 10 o'clock p.m., just after midnight. the first runner came through. And the way that this aid station was set up, you could see the runners, headlamps. It was kind of a U shape coming into the aid station down off of this, kind of trail road. And so you could see the runners coming down on the opposite side of that road. Basically about, depending on how fast they were going, anywhere between 30 seconds and a minute ahead of when they actually reached the aid station. And it was just so cool to see these headlamps coming out of the wilderness, the middle of the night, and these runners that have been through hell. The Hellbender 100 is a obviously a 100-mile course, but has about 23,000 feet of elevation gain. It just a beast of a course. So, these men and women are just beat up as they come into this final aid station. And so I just wanted Manuel to see what people are capable of pushing themselves to. And probably my favorite runner from this perspective was the first female that came through the aid station. She was covered head to toe in mud. Her right knee was open pretty bad. She had blood dripping down her knee. Just a total beast in terms of what she had been through, and clearly, just pushing herself to the max limits. And it was just an amazing thing, I think, to see her and other runners coming through that space. And so, we get back from the race. He had a great time. He loved helping the runners. He loved seeing these runners. Just a really cool experience. When we got back on Saturday, I was destroyed. I was tired. Manuel, I think, got about 4 hours sleep. I got none. And so I was destroyed. So I went and took a nap. Manuel went and hit the treadmill, went and downstairs, hit the treadmill, ran 2 miles, came up, pouring buckets, did the same thing the following day. It clearly, inspired, it clearly lit up, Manuel about, this incredible thing that people can put themselves through, and what human beings are capable of. So, applying this to law, when we have the opportunity to show young lawyers the ropes, whether that's an associate or somebody outside of your firm, a young lawyer in the bar, when we have the ability to have law students come in and do a summer associate position with us, when we have the ability to have an intern, somebody that's maybe interested, that's in high school or in college, go and be a part of our team, watch us in action, help us at the office. It's really amazing what that can provide in terms of the future value to that individual. We have had so many lawyers on the podcast that have shared their experience of being a young person and watching a great lawyer in action. I think this is particularly true of like second generation or third generation lawyers that got to see their dad in action in the courtroom. There's been several attorneys on the podcast that have shared that experience of going with their father to the jail, to the courtroom, and having the law be present around them, and just how inspiring that was. So I think, there is no doubt that ability to see a lawyer in action, whether that's a family member or somebody in the community, is inspiring to people. It really is an example that I think we take for granted, or we don't even realize that we are people that have the ability to inspire others to this amazing call, this amazing profession that we are a part of. So, again, the why we went to this, to work at this aid station at the Hellbender, was for my son to see, human beings kind of at their best, reaching for the stars, achieving what feels like the impossible dream, and showing that what appears impossible on paper in real life is possible. But it can be brutal, and it can look rough, and there can be this kind of just savage mentality to it, but it can work. And so again, we have the ability to inspire others to greatness through our legal leadership. So that is point number one: inspire the community, inspire young lawyers, young law students, young interns, people that are interested in the legal field. Inspire them to action, and take them under your wing whenever you have the ability to do that. Number two thing I learned from the being an aid station volunteer was detachment. This is something, as I've got Jocko Willink's Discipline Equals Freedom in the background. I'm a big fan of the Jocko podcast, and Jocko very frequently talks about the importance of detaching. This is a quote from Jocko. One of the key qualities a leader must possess is the ability to detach from the chaos, mayhem, and emotions in a situation and make good, clear decisions based on what is actually happening. One of the key qualities a leader must possess is the ability to detach from the chaos, mayhem, and emotions in a situation and make good, clear decisions based on what is actually happening. Beyond wanting my son to see runners at their best, these peak athletes at their toughest, most difficult moment, continuing to press on. One of the main reasons I wanted to work at this aid station was to learn. I'm interested in being a better endurance runner, and so I wanted to learn from the experience. And to me, working as an aid station volunteer provided such a great opportunity to learn. And going into it, that was my thought process: is I'm going to learn a ton. I got to see what stellar athletes look like at the end of a endurance race. The Daytona 100 that I ran, the only person that I saw across the finish line was myself. I was, not close to anybody else. At that point in the race, I think that there was, a long gap, both in terms of the runner ahead of me and behind me. And I was spent by the point that I got there. So I didn't necessarily really even see anybody else coming across the finish line or see what they looked like. I mean, it was just at such a point of extreme physical exhaustion. So I wanted to see, what do the best athletes in this sport look like when they cross the finish line. So that was a great learning experience. What kind of gear were they using? There was so much that I learned about the gear for this kind of a trail race. The 100-mile distance that I ran was on a road. Very limited gear really was required for that road race. So I got to learn a ton about the gear required for a trail race. What do runners pick up at aid stations? What are people doing in the aid station? Is there any type of gear change that they're doing at aid station? All of these things I wanted to pick up, and it was an incredible learning experience from that vantage point. Additionally, the lady that was working at the aid station with me and my son, she had run this particular race the year before and had done a number of 100-mile races. So over the 10 hours that we were working the aid station, I got to hear of her experiences. I got to ask questions about that. I would say about 85 to 90% of the time we were at the aid station was downtime. There's only, a runner coming in every, 30 minutes or so for the time that we were at the aid station on average. And they were, on average at the aid station for, probably 5 minutes. So, not a ton of like active helping going on at the aid station. A lot of it was downtime, but I was able to learn a lot from her about, kind of what's worked for her in 100-mile races, nutrition wise, gear wise, what has been her, mindset at different parts of races. So just a ton of great experience. And it's so much easier to see that when the questions that runners would ask when they would come into the aid stations, which we'll get to in just a second. What is kind of the mindset of great runners coming into an aid station. There was so much to be learned from that, and the only way to do that isn't to be like running the race. It's to detach and have kind of a removed view of what is going on. You can't do it as a runner. You can't do it as a pacer, because as a pacer, you're focused on your runner and getting them from that aid station to the next aid station. So it was just an incredible learning opportunity. And so again, the importance of detaching from what we are doing in the law is critical. It is so important to step back and reflect about how we are running our business. How are we trying cases? How are we trying to improve the client experience? What kind of culture are we trying to create for our employees? All of these things require that detachment, require that step back. And so, one of the things that we are working on currently at the office is we're improving our intake system, improving our way of handling incoming calls. We've basically hired a team of players that are our intake team. And so we're really trying to kind of improve our intake process. And so one of the ways that we have tried to improve that process is by going and watching somebody do the intake center in action. We went down and visited a few months back Brian King's office. Brian King was on the podcast back on episode 71 talking about scaling up your business. But we went down to Brian King's call center, and we're able to learn so many things by that experience, by just watching what was working, what questions are being asked, what is the process of setting up consults through the intake center, what is the kind of scripting look like for this. There was just an enormous amount of lessons learned, and the easiest way to do that was for us to just detach, not really just be answering phones here in the office and seeing, maybe how we can improve, but taking a step back, going and looking at what is working for another business, and then implementing some of those ideas back into our own system. We do regular quarterly mock trial days for the exact same reason. When you're just trying cases, it's hard to improve because you don't have the ability to see what is working well for yourself, to see what other lawyers are doing well. So that's why mock trial days are so critical to us. We take away so many great lessons from these kind of shared learning opportunities at the firm. Our understanding of the law improves, our arguments improve, the way that we move through the courtroom, use technology, all of these things improve by practice, but doing it in a detached situation where there's nobody's, kind of life on the line, so to speak, no real client that is being, hurt by any type of, exploratory, techniques that we're trying out in that kind of mock trial setting, and getting feedback then, live from other lawyers. It's just such a valuable opportunity. So, if you don't have the ability to do mock trial days, go and watch other attorneys in the courtroom, see what is working in the courtroom. We are considering opening up our mock trial days to lawyers outside the firm. If you're interested in attending our mock trial days, we do some of those virtually, some of those we do in person throughout the state. Let me know. We're very much considering at least opening up a portion of those mock trial days to other criminal defense lawyers. So shoot me a message, give me a call. so that I can kind of put you on the list for attending those public mock trial days. But that is something that is just such a great advantage to us. And doing the same, whether it's improving your practice, whether it's improving your business or your law firm systems, having that ability to step back and think about and look at what's working and implement new ideas is so critical to taking your game to the next level. So number 2 takeaway is detach. Number 3, and this is the basically the title takeaway of today's episode. This comes really from David Goggins, who talks about the importance of mental aid stations. So what are mental aid stations? Well, Goggins was on Joe Rogan's podcast recently, and Joe Rogan was asking him, hey, I know that you've got this mentality of just constantly work, constantly fight. You don't appear to ever take a vacation. How do you avoid burnout? How are you, people are watching you. How are you pushing yourself to these limits without taking any breaks? And Goggins responded, well, I take breaks all the time. I'm not working around the clock. I'm taking mental aid stations throughout the day. In his example, he said, when I take a shower, I don't think about, running, working out. I don't think about people. I don't think about what's on my agenda. I'm taking a complete mental break. When I'm driving the car, same thing. I don't think about people. I don't think about running. I don't think about my to-do list. I take a mental aid station. I hit a mental aid station. When I'm eating, I'm not, also typing out emails or responding to, having a conversation on the phone. I focus on and enjoy what's before me, what's in front of me. And really enjoy that moment of having this mental relief, this mental aid station. So you got to have these mental aid stations. And in terms of where I saw this best in the race was, you'd think of an aid station as, well, what's the importance of the aid station? It's so I can get fluids. It's so I can get some food. It's so I can, basically clean up, change my shoes. You think about all of these physical reasons for an aid station, but one of the runners, particularly, I'm sure that everybody's getting some sort of mental relief by hitting an aid station, moving on. But one of the runners in particular had a true mental aid station break that was just glorious. And he was my son's favorite runner because of this. So the lady that was working the aid station with us had made this homemade potato soup. It was delicious, the delicious potato soup. And so we gave a cup of this to a number of runners, and most of them are eating this because there's sodium in it. There's, some olive oil. So you're getting some fat, you're getting some carbohydrates through the potatoes. You're getting, this kind of, again, fuel to kind of keep you pushing for the rest of the race. But this runner, as he ate this kind of, lukewarm soup, I would call it, closed his eyes and just kind of breathed in the relief that he was experiencing from that moment, from just the kind of mental brutality of what he had just, kind of accomplished through running those first 93 miles and knowing that he had, another 7 to go. Took a step back and just fully experienced that soup. It wasn't, I would say, from my perspective, a particularly, cold night. I think it was upper 40s, low 50s in terms of where we were. But up on Mount Mitchell, it was freezing cold. And there was a couple of runners that were dealing with hypothermia, up at that elevation and with, very limited protection from any wind. It was cold. And so there was just this moment where he soaked in the beauty of that, delicious soup, and really took not only a physical aid station, but a mental aid station. And, kind of going back to my episode on avoiding burnout, this is what we need to make sure that we are doing. We need to take these mental aid stations. I think so often we think, kind of along the Joe Rogan question of asking, well, when was the last time that you took a vacation? When was, the last time that you did this fun activity? And I will say, I have heard attorneys that say that I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's crazy. I mean, you got to take a vacation. I mean, that there is no reason that literally like a decade of your life when you're in your prime should be vacationless. I mean, that there is a real, I think, a problematic mindset if that's where we are as a profession, that I just don't have the time to take a vacation. It doesn't fit into my schedule. Again, there could be other reasons not to take a vacation, so it doesn't mean you're required to take a trip every 4 months or something. But if you're not doing it because you're overloaded, that is the exact reason why you should be taking a vacation. So there's kind of these like irregular mental aid stations, which are, your yearly trip to the beach, or your, weekend getaway with the family to, the water park or whatever it might be. But that's not really enough in terms of avoiding burnout. You have to have more regular mental aid stations. As important as those, family and personal vacations are, those irregular mental aid stations, it's much, much more important to have the regular aid stations. So whether that is, fitness, relaxation, a hobby that you are interested in, meditation, prayer, there are all kinds of examples of this. It might be, that 3 times a week, and you don't have to schedule this, but it might be that, every time that you're in court, you step into the attorney lounge and sit down with anybody else that's in the attorney lounge for 30 minutes and just chit chat about nothing. It might be that when you take your lunch, instead of just sitting at your desk and chowing down on food, stuffing it down your face as you try to respond to phone calls, emails, the latest fire that's come up at the office, you go sit down outside and have a few moments where you're just breathing in the outdoor air and the sun. We have a picnic table in the back of our office that I frequently see in the summertime, our team eating at. We have some nice front steps that I'll regularly see people take their lunch out and go eat at, and I do the same thing. It's just so nice to have that kind of like true, 10-minute break. Amy, one of the attorneys at the office, will several times a week, just between preparing for case or consult or whatever it might be, step outside and walk around the block before before moving on to the next thing. Just getting that kind of quick mental aid station is so critical, as opposed to just constantly doing the next thing until you go to bed. I really do think that the key to that kind of long-term success, where it looks like somebody is always working and never taking a break. Like, I think that David Goggins is kind of the epitome of that, persona, but he's taking those mental aid stations. He's just doing it in kind of the ordinary, normal moments of the day. And something I think we need to do a good job of is making sure that we are getting enough mental aid stations. So number 3, take your mental aid station. Get a mental aid station. Number 4, no 2 runners are the same. And this is true of attorneys as well. No 2 lawyers are the same, but no 2 runners are the same. It was just wild to look at what the different runners got when they came into an aid station. Some runners would come in and they would get, fluids only, fill up on water. Others wanted, to drink electrolytes. Some people took a gel. Other people needed more solid food, so they would, get a banana potato soup, pretzels, chips, one of my favorite runners that came through, basically, all he wanted, and this is, we got 7 miles left. All he wanted, he was one of the front runners. I believe he was in 4th place overall. So, this is one of the high level athletes. But all he wanted was Coke. So he filled up his water bottle with Coke. He started to walk away from the aid station and then came back and was like, actually, you know what? Yeah, go ahead and give me a cup of Coke as well. So he chugged that down and then took off with his bottle full of Coke. But that's all he got at the aid station was literally Coke. So it's just so interesting how every runner is different in terms of what their body needs in terms of fuel. What is their kind of process? No two runners really took the same thing. There might have been a couple of runners that took water only, but out of the 15 to 20 runners that stopped by during the time we were working the aid station, everybody was taking some different combination of things, of items from the aid station. And so again, no two runners are the same. No two runners' needs are the same. And so, this is so true when it comes to lawyering. No two lawyers are the same. For one person, family law might be their whole gig. That's what they were, born to do. It's what they went to law school for. And for another attorney, that might be literally like a death sentence. Like if you got to go handle this family law case, just, the total lack of passion, interest. This is a punishment to have to go deal with this thing. The same thing is true when it comes to, not only practice areas, but your persona in the courtroom. We've talked about this a number of times on the podcast. Chaz Post talked about this in our most recent episode, is that you've got to find your persona in the courtroom. No two lawyers present a case the same way. It's okay if you are the aggressive go-getter, loud, boisterous attorney in the courtroom. And it's okay also to be the person that, is very humbly, asking questions and kind of coming from it at a very, kind of low energy, cross-examination point, a very, very methodical and thoughtful, but not really passionate during their closing argument. Both of those can be personas that work in the courtroom, highly effective. Just because you see a attorney that is being loud or passionate in the courtroom, or you see an attorney that is solely up there almost as an appellate attorney that is very much just very black and white about arguing the law and facts. Whatever works for you is the way that you should go about it. There's no perfect mold. There's no one way of being a great criminal defense lawyer in particular, or a lawyer generally. What excites you, the way that you do things, is going to be different than every other attorney. So, number 4, no two runners and no two lawyers are the same. Number 5 takeaway from working the aid station was plan your aid station. Know what you need going in. Plan your aid station. If you are scrambling to get an aid station and you wait too long, you are going to blow up. You've got to know what you got to plan your aid station. You got to know what you need going into the aid station. One thing that I noticed was at our aid station, we had a ton of food options, drink options. And I think for some runners, it could be overwhelming. If you come in with no idea that, hey, I feel like chips and electrolytes are going to do it for me, it can be overwhelming. You also, if you're feeling, 3 miles before the aid station, I really should change my shoes. Then you need to know going into the aid station, okay, I'm going to sit down, change the shoes and size. I'm going to get a cup of water, sit down as I'm drinking that and trying to, eat a banana. I'm going to change my shoes. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to fill up my water bottles, or have the aid station volunteers take care of my water bottles while I'm putting my shoes on. I'm going to get some chips in a bag and I'm going to go. There's all of these steps that happen at the aid station when it is done well, but you want to make sure that you don't, I would say, waste the aid station. So if you if your aid station, let's say, big picture is, taking a vacation, and you're feeling burned out, right? Like you feel, mentally destroyed from work, going on a vacation where it's going to be go, 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 do all of these, go sightsee all of these incredible places. That may not be what you need in terms of having a true break, having a true aid station. Maybe you need to go sit in a cabin and just have some time that your phone isn't constantly blowing up in your face and you're not running, and you can just sit down and have some time to not be constantly on the move. Maybe you do need that. Maybe you do need to be, going out and you're passionate about history. So you take this, trip around the Civil War battlefields or whatever it might be. Make sure that you're planning your aid station on the day-to-day level. Again, plan in those aid stations, instead of, again, just having a protein bar or a couple of grapes or something for your lunch. Take the time to plan your aid station that's going to be coming up at lunchtime. Get some good food in your system, so that you can refuel your body, but also have that kind of like actual break, that momentary break in the day that you can just kind of use to reset, take a breather, and then come back stronger. So make sure that you don't arrive at a mental aid station unprepared. To take full advantage of your mental aid station, you need to be prepped and know what you need at that aid station. So number 5, plan your aid station. Number 6, this is a critical one, I think, from racing, but it definitely applies in business as well. Don't stay at an aid station too long. Don't stay at an aid station too long. Refuel and keep moving. This is so critical. You've got these runners that are coming in. They've run 93 miles, through, a just absolute mass amount of elevation gain, going up and down these just, steep mountains as they're summiting these different peaks as they're coming through the course. Maybe have taken a bad fall, busted a toe against rock. I mean, all kinds of potential physical problems in addition to just being exhausted. And so you've got to know, going in that kind of sitting down in that chair might feel good. Taking a really long break might feel good, but you still got those 7 miles left to go. And so, for a 100-mile race, when you hit an aid station, there is a real danger in staying in that aid station too long. The longer that you're out on the course, the more overall time that you're spending. Your body is breaking down. It's getting exhausted from just kind of, not being able to truly rest at any point. It's really a dangerous place to kind of just not be able to get to the finish line. And I think a lot of races have blown up. A lot of people have not finished these endurance races because of the fact that they've spent too much time at a aid station. I think from our side of things, in terms of looking at this and applying this lesson to the business of law, if you get too comfortable, then you can get complacent. And I think complacency leads honestly to burnout. It leads to a lack of passion. It leads to, ultimately to just being not happy with the practice of law. And so, getting too comfortable, I think, can be a real problem. You've got to keep pushing yourself, because that's where growth is. If things are feeling tedious, boring, monotonous, if we're not kind of focused on what we're doing or trying to elevate our game or push ourselves, there is just going to be some sort of automatic disconnect then with elevating our game, with pushing ourselves harder. It's such a crazy thing to really think about the times in our life, in our whether it's in the practice of law or in our personal lives, where we've just taken our foot off the gas a little bit. And the longer that we do that, the harder it is to get back in to the routine. I think that so many of us can feel that, particularly when you come back from a vacation and you have this like pile of work in front of you, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to get back to this thing. And there's just desire to kind of hold on to that break, really just, be salivating over a couple of more days. And so that may be a sign that we're not taking enough mental aid stations when we, still are feeling that burnout when we've come back from a vacation. But I think that it is dangerous to stay in a mental aid station for too long. We can become complacent, which ultimately leads to, a stagnation. It leads to complacency, which ultimately, in my opinion, leads to death, mental death, so to speak. And so the more that we are willing to kind of just get moving and keep going, get back into the process, generally speaking, that is one of those things. When you think about somebody that is in a state of depression, is it better for that person to sit in depression, or to maybe get up and go for a walk, or to go exercise, to read a book, to sit outside? Obviously, all those things are a great way to kind of get the mind in a better state. And I mean, obviously you need to maybe seek mental health in that position as well. But it's a just staying in that space is not good. And so again, we need to have that mentality of, okay, I understand that I've hit this mental aid station, but I've kind of also got to get back into the process, kind of keep pushing the ball forward. The way I saw this most perfectly executed in the race was the first two runners that came through. Talk about don't stay at an aid station too long. The first runner blew past the aid station, and it was actually like a disappointing moment for my son, because we had been sitting there for over 2 hours. Every 10 minutes, my son's like, hey, when's the next runner, or when's the first runner going to come through? And I was like, I don't know. It looks like on the live tracker that they're a couple of miles out, but that could be in the world of running through trails. That could be 5 minutes. It could be 20 minutes. So finally, at just after midnight, the first runner comes through. We're all cheering, excited. We've got, my son had helped make these wraps, and he was undoing lids, and he was so excited to have somebody come in and take some of this food that he prepped. And the lead runner waved at us and kept on going. And I'll explain why he did that here in a few minutes. But he didn't stop at all. The only runner that didn't stop at all at that aid station just kept on trucking towards the finish line. Was 100% running, and he didn't slow down. So there was no thought on his end of, am I going to stop at this mental aid station or actual aid station? He just kept on going. The second runner that came through second place, he came through about 25 minutes later, and basically had his water bottles filled, took a quick sip, I think, of either electrolytes or water, and then he was on his way. And as he left, he's like, I said, what else can we get you? Again, I'm expecting people to be taking food and all this stuff. He's like, man, I just got to get out there and get this thing done. And that's the attitude. I think get it done, do the thing the Nike slogan of just do it. There's so much power in that. It's kind of like I really just can't stay here too long. I've got to go out and finish this project that I've started. So I loved that mentality. And they were the two front runners were the perfect examples of don't stay at an aid station too long. On the flip side of that, so here we go, number 7, don't blow past an aid station when you are running on fumes. So this is the flip side of number 6. Don't stay at an aid station too long. The flip side is don't run past an aid station when you are running on fumes. There was one particular runner that really stood out to me. I think he was the last runner that I helped, or that we helped before we took off from our volunteer position. But he basically, was, I think, kind of contemplating, maybe I just fill up a water bottle and keep moving. He had a pacer with him, and he kind of like had this moment of reflection of like, man, I would love to just keep on going, but I need to refuel. He literally said, so this is where this comes from, I'm running on fumes right now. So he had a cup of soup. I think he might have taken, some other little thing to eat, got some water, just kind of, stood there for a moment as he kind of mentally steadied himself for that final, approximately 7-mile stretch. But there was a real, I think, moment of great self-realization on his end that, man, as much as I would love to keep going, I have a long way to go. 7 miles for him at that point was probably somewhere between somewhere around 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer than that. So it's not like, 5 minutes later, he's going to be at the finish line. It was a long stretch still to go to get to the finish line. And so, just taking that, 5 minutes in the aid station versus 30 seconds is a huge advantage when you really need what's being offered at that aid station. So don't blow through those mental aid stations. If you think about similar thing, if you got 1/8 of a tank of gas and you have 100 miles to go, it's probably a good idea to stop at a gas station and get some gas, because as much as you might think I'm going to get there quicker if I just keep on driving, you're going to end up on the side of the road, just a little ways down the road, and you're still going to be 50 miles from your destination. But now it's going to take a lot longer to get refueled, and you may end up having to leave the car. So sometimes we will get there faster by taking that break. So I think, again, the key message from this is, if you are burned out, you have got to refuel. If you're burned out with the practice of law, you have got to find some means of refueling, whether that means taking a sabbatical, a true sabbatical from the law, whether that means, from this point forward, I'm going to take Fridays off and I'm going to go do something that I enjoy. This sounds a lot easier than it might be to execute, but it also, it is the easy way out, because the other option is just to basically destroy our future health by continuing to remain in burnout, to hate this wonderful profession that we're a part of, because it's destroying our psyche and our personal life. So it really is, in some sense, the easy way out, to kind of focus on what is working. Number 7, you've got to really stay in the aid station or find more frequent aid stations when burnout has set in. If you are running on fumes when it comes to your practice, when it comes to your profession, when it comes to your career, you need to find that mental aid station and take a break. Hey, podcast listeners, I want to briefly interrupt today's episode to invite you to join me at the inaugural Freedom Fighter Summit in Asheville this October. This in-person only event is designed for growth-minded lawyers determined to take their criminal defense practice to the next level. Due to the size of the summit's venue, there are a limited number of seats available. Don't miss out on the incredible lineup of speakers and spectacular networking opportunity that this summit provides. For more details, visit www.freedomfighter.com. www.miniclaw.com/summit. Enter the promo code NCDWI guy, all lowercase, all one word at checkout for $150 off your summit ticket. Look forward to seeing you there. Now back to the show. Number 8, don't get too focused on the finish. Don't get too focused on the finish line. It most often is not where you think. So this race, 100 miles is a long way to go. And when you get to the end of a 100-mile race, every step is problematic. Every step is excruciating. I remember when I did the Daytona 100, we were getting close to the end of the race. My brother, who was pacing me, told me, I think we have like a half a mile left to go. And then a couple of minutes later, he was like, I think it was a little bit off about that. We still have about like 0.7 miles to go. And so, it was probably like a half a mile difference from what he had just told me. And that felt like so deflating. It was like, oh my gosh, like, I had already set my brain up. Okay, we've got, only, X amount of like minutes or steps to the finish line. And now we've just tacked on another 5. And I was just physically pretty broken at that point. So, I mean, it just felt like this enormous amount of time left. So at the Hellbender 100, it's a 100-mile race. So when you're looking at your watch, when you're looking at your, probably just your watch, and you're tracking, how many miles that you've gone, you expect that when your watch hits 100 miles, you're going to be able to quit. Like that's where the finish line is going to be. And a lot of these 100-mile races, just because, they don't want to necessarily have somebody finish in 99 miles, are a mile or two over the 100-mile distance. Or as you're walking in and out of aid stations, or kind of taking these additional steps, you're building in steps that aren't a part of the course. So the actual course at the Hellbender, I think was, actually between 101 and 102 miles. So a number of runners that came through our aid station. We were at just post 93 miles in. There was 6.8 miles left to go. But because of these discrepancies in the course, or, people's steps, when they got to our aid station, their watch was probably at mile 95, or their thought process is I've only got 5 miles left. So this, at first I thought maybe this one runner, the first person that said this, was like just not calculating things right. But then after a while I was like, oh man, they're all thinking there's only 5 miles to go. So a number of runners basically came through thinking, I only have 5 miles left. And when they saw on our sign that there was 6.8 miles to go, devastating. One lady asked, is this a bad joke? Like, it can't possibly be, that much longer to the finish line. Like that's not matching up with where my mental expectation is. And it's so hard to be in that position, as a volunteer, because you're like, man, it's not a bad joke. Like you really got 6.8 miles. And again, that difference of 1.8 miles sounds insignificant. It's like, well, what is 1.8 miles when you run 100? It is a huge deal. It is a big mental hurdle to say, I thought I had 5 left to go, and I have actually 6.8 to go. If you're walking at a 20 minute per mile pace, you've just added on like 35 minutes to this excruciating, process that you're going through. So it's no small distance at that point in the race to say that you've got, only another mile and a half plus to go. It's every 10th of a mile feels like this incredible mental hurdle to get through. So don't set your expectations too tight when it comes to a specific financial goal that you're trying to get after in your firm. When it comes to where you expect to be in terms of your kind of trial preparation, or your techniques as a lawyer, try not to set too hard of a finish line. I think the beauty of business, unlike a specific sporting event like a 100-mile race, is that we're never finished. There is no finish line coming. Whatever the kind of short-term, daily, weekly, quarterly, yearly, 3-year goals are, whatever your goals are, at the end of that finish line, a new start line begins. There's never really coming that kind of final finish line. So don't set your expectations too tight. I think for a lot of young lawyers or a lot of young associates, people that are opening up their own shop, there is this expectation of kind of instant success, and it is very few and far between people that actually experience that. And even then, it's likely because there has been a lot of groundwork laid that most outside people cannot see. But I think that the finish lines get set much too soon for a lot of attorneys, that this is going to be something that I'm going to instantly be good at, whether it's trying cases, talking to clients, hiring. Like I'm going to be a great employer on, with regard to my first employee. Very unlikely. I mean, it's just very unlikely that you all of a sudden just kind of like pick up all the skills necessary to recruit the right talent, train appropriately, onboard that person, create a culture and keep a culture going that that person wants to remain a part of. Like, it's very unlikely that you get all of those things right on the first go round. So it's such an important thing to make sure that we're not setting too aggressive a finish line, or mentally setting ourselves up for a lack of success by putting the finish line prior to where it actually might be. So don't get too focused on the finish line. What I've said many times on this podcast is enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the journey. When you're focused totally on the finish line, then basically all you care about is getting to the end of the race, and you miss all of the beauty and difficulty and toughness and joys and sorrows that come along the path towards that. So, set yourself up right by not focusing too much on the finish line. Don't have that be your number one priority, because again, it is most often not where you think it is. So number 8, don't get too focused on the finish. Number 9, and this is one of my favorite, maybe this is my favorite of the whole episode, and that is competition is good. I would actually say, let me change that right now. Competition is great. This is from Andrew Whitworth, who is a NFL tackle. If you're a true warrior, competition doesn't scare you. It makes you better. If you're a true warrior, competition doesn't scare you. It makes you better. That's just absolutely the case. And where I saw this the most on my aid station volunteering was between the two front runners, Tim Nooney, who actually won the race, and Jonathan Ibach, who came in second. Ibach had won the race the previous year. And so these two runners, unbeknownst to us at the time of working in the aid station, had basically been kind of like pushing each other, pushing themselves the entire race, and had kind of been at the front of the pack almost the entire day. Nooney led much of the race, but as they were getting closer and closer to the finish line, Jonathan Ibach started to gain on Nooney. And Ibach, I think, basically shared that he had been in Nooney's position the year before, where he led almost the entire race. Felt that like kind of, where are the runners behind me? I don't know, just basically kind of like out there in front alone, not knowing kind of when somebody was getting close. So, from Nooney's position, I don't know where the competition is behind me. He didn't know where Ibach was specifically, other than probably getting some information from his crew about where Ibach's GPS is showing that he was at some of the aid stations. Very limited knowledge about how far Ibach was. At every aid station Ibach's going to, he can ask, when did Nooney come through? How many minutes ahead of me is. So there's a real advantage actually to being, in second place, because how far away the front runner is, where they are in front of you. So as we were watching, at midnight, the first runner, Nooney, come in. Again, my son was all excited to help take care of this guy. He would, had all of the food ready to go. He was ready to help, like fill up water bottles. He was ready to help somebody, and so was utterly disappointed when Nooney just kind of like went flying on by. From my standpoint, I was just blown away. I was so impressed. Like, I was like, man, I cannot believe this dude is running at this stage in the race, and not only running, but just blasting past the aid station and headed home. Like, it was literally like one of the most impressive sports moments that I've ever been like a kind of first person witness to. It was amazing. And so I was just in this mindset of, oh my gosh, like what an incredible athlete. Well, I didn't realize until later that Nooney was running scared. I mean, he's running, as fast as he can because he doesn't know where Ibach exactly is behind him. And apparently at the aid station just prior to ours, so at the last aid station, Nooney had come through, and basically 13 minutes later, Ibach comes through that aid station. And Nooney, who is in front, basically can hear, probably a mile and a half, 2 miles down the trail, the cheers that Ibach receives when he comes into that aid station behind him. So he hears the yells and the screams and the encouragement going towards Ibach in his window. So again, he doesn't know exactly how far away those sounds are. He doesn't know exactly where Ibach is, but he knows that he has gained some ground because he can now hear the cheering of the crowd behind him. Again, Ibach at every aid station, and when he came through at our aid station, basically first question is, how far ahead of me is Nooney? How far ahead? And I never worked an aid station before. I didn't really kind of understand like that was probably the only thing really he cared about coming through. Again, he ultimately got his water bottles filled up and then took off pretty quick after that. But, that was really like of his primary importance was how close am I to that front runner? So if you ever work an aid station at one of these long distance events, just know that for the front runners, that's probably the most important thing that you can give them is the specific time frame that the last runner took off from. So make a note of that. But again, from our point of view, competition is good. So both Nooney and Ibach benefited from this competition. Both of them broke the previous course record that was set a few years earlier. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but it had been a few years that the course record was set. So they both came in under that time. Yet two people break the course record. They finished within 25 minutes of each other. Ibach broke his personal record that he had set in that course the year before. So there's just this absolute value to the competition. Nooney came through at about 12:05, somewhere in that range. Ibach came through about 12:30. The next runner came through at about 2:45 a.m. Think about that. Think about the time difference of that. Almost 2 hours and 15 minutes after, and I don't think that there was any other break that was near that long between any other runners that came through the aid station. Giant break between these kind of two front runners and the third place. And I know without a doubt that those two runners both ran better races. The first and second runners, Nooney and Ibach, both ran better races because of the competition between them. Yes, They were, trying to probably achieve their own goals, whether that's breaking the course record, coming in first, whatever it might be. But they both ran better races. They were both pushed to their kind of fullest potential because of the competition between them. And that is why, to me, elevating the bar is so important. It's why elevating the bar is so important, because it really is only in elevating the bar that each of us as professionals, each of us as attorneys, each of us as law firm owners, or as attorneys that work within a firm, it's only in the elevation of the bar that we each get better. Competition is not something to be, that we have to deal with, that, we wish there was left of. It should be something where it is welcomed. I've been in counties where outside lawyers are not welcome. Outside of, if you don't practice in that county, you are not a welcome attorney. And that is just such a backwards mindset. If somebody is coming into your market, into your locational area, hopefully that person is going to push you to new heights. The only time that competition is bad is if we are no longer looking to push ourselves to a new level. If we are done growing, if we're done pushing, then competition stinks, because it's just, basically like taking away business. But if we're in a growth mindset, if we're looking to really elevate our game, to elevate the way that we deliver services, to elevate our team, to elevate the practices that we are building, the only way to do that is through other lawyers continuing to push and try new things and teach us. I mean, I'm copycatting a lot of what we're doing at the law firm from other great lawyers and law firms, both current and past. I mean, there's just so much benefit to seeing greatness in action, and that allows us to really push ourselves to new heights. So I would say competition is great. If you're a true warrior, competition doesn't scare you, it makes you better. Thirst for the competition. Welcome the competition. Welcome it. You'll get better from it. You'll push the competition to be better by elevating your own game. So enjoy that competitive mindset. It will push both of you to new heights. Both Nooney and Ibach, I read their kind of reflections on the race afterwards on Strava, and they both really acknowledged the fact that they each ran better because of the other. There was no nastiness exchange. There was no, Nooney won in some underhanded way. It was both players recognizing that they had done better individually because of the other. So just powerful. Competition is great. So that's number 9. Number 10, knowing where your competitors are is vitally important. I talked about this a little bit there during that last one, so I'll kind of be brief in this reflection. But knowing where your competition is really does help kind of set the standard, and something that we should be aware of. Don't become tunnel focused only on your own business. In running, you can become tunnel focused only on your own game, but you're really not competing if that's what your sole focus is on yourself. You have to understand where the competition is at sometimes. Again, the same fella that filled up exclusively on Coke, he came in, again, this is the number 4 runner. He came into the aid station, and his first question was, how far is the, how close is the runner that's in front of me? I don't know if he knew he was in 4th place or not, so I don't know how much that, kind of factored in. But we told him 30 minutes, and immediately he basically kind of like had a different approach. Like had we said, 5 minutes, I think he would have blasted out of there. But when we said 30 minutes, he said, okay, all right. You could tell that he was going to slow down, that he knew he was not going to catch that runner, or that there was very, very small chance of him catching that runner in front of him over that last 6.8 miles. So he took a step back and then took his time, and he got his, his Coke bottles filled up. He took time to drink. He still got out of there relatively quickly, but it was a little bit, kind of less fast paced, as if there was somebody ready to catch. And so I think that there is a certain extent to where the position of our competitors does change our own mentality. And I think that that's the right attitude to have sometimes, is being aware of the competition. Take a look at other lawyers in your market's website. Watch what they do in the courtroom. How are they advocating for clients in the courtroom? What are clients, standing in the hallways saying about your competition? Are they, singing their praises through the rooftops? Well, that should be a question mark then of, well, man, am I getting that same kind of praise when I'm delivering a service in the courtroom? What are other people in the courtroom saying about them? Do you ever hear a judge kind of mutter something under their breath, or say, man, that attorney just has their act together. They know what they're doing. Pay attention to where your competitors are at, because that should clue you in on who to mimic, who to imitate, who to steal from, so to speak, right? And I know that I very much am willing to share, the things that we're doing here at our firm, and other lawyers have been as well. So I say steal and jest, but learning where your competition is, seeing where your competition is, should hopefully be able to help you elevate your own game. If you're just so tunnel visioned and focused only on your own firm that you don't know what great legal representation looks like, what great legal marketing looks like, what a great client experience looks like, it's difficult to kind of create that out of just your own mind. You have to have somebody else that you can, again, steal from, imitate, bounce ideas off of. There needs to be some understanding of where your competitors are. So keep a pulse on the competition, number 10. And then finally, my bonus takeaway, this is the last one, bonus takeaway is, and this kind of goes along with numbers 9 and 10, but there is plenty of room for everyone. Everyone can run and succeed. Everybody that we saw come through this aid station at the Hellbender was, to some extent, and I would say to a large extent, running their own race. While the competition was important, this was primarily a how far can I push myself kind of quest. Primarily, it was not, I'm only running this so I finish first, or I'm only running this so I finish in the top 10. It was primarily, I think, a quest for all of these runners of, I'm about to go do something incredibly difficult, and I'm going to see how far I can push my body, how far I can push my mental toughness. What am I capable of? So while it's good to have a pulse on the competition, and while competition is great, as we've just talked about those two takeaways, primarily we are running the race, and primarily we are running our businesses against ourselves. Our primary competition is ourselves. Are we getting better than yesterday? Are we improving? Are we growing? Are we elevating our game day in and day out? The mark by which, the standard by which we should be measuring ourselves is, am I better than yesterday? Am I better than I was a year ago? Am I better than I was 5 years ago? And it's one of the most fun things for me to reflect on at the office, because we are far from perfect. We are far from having figured it out. There is a lot of things that could improve in terms of our culture, in terms of our preparation, in terms of our training, in terms of our hiring processes, our systems at the office. I mean, there's just, an unlimited amount of things that we have yet to improve. But when I look back at where our firm was, where I was as a lawyer 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, it is laughable. And it's fun. It's fun to look at the wild west of where things started out and where we've gotten to so far, because it's just truly amazing to see the different progressions that we have gone through as a team and as a culture, to kind of improve, push ourselves to the next level, do things better, deliver a better client experience. And so it's fun to look back at that. And then that only makes me more excited about the future, because it's not been stagnant. I'm not the same attorney that I was 5 years ago. We are definitely not the same team that we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It is a new day and age at the firm. And so I know that there is a new day and age coming down the road, which is exciting. But the competition in a very large way is ourselves, because that's the easiest kind of competitor, so to speak, to look back at and see did we make some good changes? Are we going in the right direction? The only way to do that is to be able to measure yourself against where you were yesterday. So better than yesterday. I mean, it's all about those kind of incremental improvements over time. But because of the fact that we are our number one competitor, that means that there is plenty of room for everyone. Everyone is leveling up themselves. Everyone can get better. And because of the individual goals that we set for ourselves and the way that we're trying to push ourselves to the max limit, that means ultimately, like in racing, in the law, everybody can win. Look forward to speaking with you again next time.